In this video, we're going to talk about the relationship between certain angles when two parallel lines are intersected by a transversal. So in all of these examples, we're going to be looking at three different lines. Two will be parallel, and then one will be a line that cuts through both of those parallel lines. So the first thing we're going to look at is called corresponding angles. So corresponding angles just mean that the angles are in matching places or corners. So let's take a look at what that picture would be. So let's just say I have, these would be my two parallel lines, and then here's my transversal that's going through them. I'm going to switch to red so you can see this, these congruent, or these corresponding angles. So corresponding angles would be like this red angle on the top, and then this angle right beneath it. Okay, they're kind of in the same spot on the parallel line in relation to the transversal. And corresponding angles are congruent. This only works if the lines are parallel, so make sure you're only using this if lines are parallel. Next, we have alternate exterior angles. So, two things have to be true to have alternate exterior angles. One is that you have to be on the exterior, and two is the angles are on opposite sides of the transversal. So let's take a look at what that will be. So I have two parallel lines. I have the transversal that cuts through them. So first I need to be on the exterior. So the exterior is anywhere like above or below the parallel lines. So let's just say I'm looking at this exterior angle. Then the alternate exterior angle would be this angle down here. Okay, it's on the outside and it's on the opposite side of the transversal. Okay. The cool thing about alternate interior angles is that they are congruent. Okay. Alternate interior angles are really similar. They're just on the interior. So we have an interior, and we're looking at angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal. Whoops, starting to get a little sloppy with my handwriting. So I'm going to have two parallel lines with the transversal that cuts through them. Then now I'm looking on in the interior, so I'm looking at the inside of my parallel lines. So let's say I'm looking at that angle. An alternate interior angle of that angle would be this angle on the bottom right. Okay. And these ones look congruent because they are congruent. So both alternate exterior and alternate interior angles are congruent. So same side interior angles. So this is exactly what it sounds like. First of all, it's going to be on the interior, and they're the same on the same side of the transversal. Okay, so I'm going to have my two parallel lines cut by a transversal. And I'm looking at these two angles that are on the same side of the transversal that are on the inside. And these angles are not congruent. These angles are supplementary, which means they sum to 180 degrees. Okay. So let's just go ahead and do some practice identifying corresponding angles, alternate exterior angles, alternate interior angles, and same side interior angles. So I'm going to try to zoom in so that you can see both my table and the picture that we're looking at. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this shape in the bottom left to name all of the corresponding angles to start with. So corresponding angles, remember, are in like matching places in your on the sides of the parallel lines. So for example, angle 2, I'm just going to write 2, just know it's an angle. So angle 2 and angle 6, those are corresponding angles because they're in the same place with relation to the parallel line and the transversal. Okay. Angles 4 and 8 are also corresponding angles. 1 and 5 are corresponding angles, and 3 and 7 are corresponding angles. Okay. So those are all angles that are in the same place on the parallel line with relation to the transversal. All right, alternate exterior angles. So here we're just going to be looking at the exterior angles, so the 1, 2, 7, and 8. And we're pairing them up based on the ones that are all like on alternate sides of each other. So angle 1 and angle 8 would be alternate exterior angles. And then angles 2 and 7 would also be a pair of alternate exterior angles. Okay, alternate interior angles. So now we're just looking at the interior, which is the angles 3, 4, 5, and 6. My alternate interior angles are 3 and 6, and 4 and 5. And then the same side interior angles, that's going to be when we start looking at those interior angles that are on the same side of the transversal. So 3 and 5, and 4 and 6. Okay. Now remember, these first 3 mean that the angles are congruent. And then this last one, the angles are supplementary. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at why we should care if they're congruent or supplementary. Okay. It's going to allow us to identify missing angles based on these relationships. So in each of these examples, A through D, we are going to identify, first of all, what the relationship is between the given angle and then angle 1, and then use that relationship to identify what the measure of angle 1 is. So in example A, we have 2 parallel lines that are going diagonal with the transversal running kind of horizontally through them. And if you look at that 64 degrees and the angle 1, those are alternate interior angles. Which is good news for us because alternate interior angles are exactly the same, they're congruent, which means that the measure of angle 1 is going to be the same as its alternate interior angle, so it's 64 degrees. Okay, in B, in B, we're also looking at interior angles, right? They're both between the parallel lines, but this time the angles are on the same side of the transversal. So these are same side interior. Now, same side interior means that they are going to add up to 180. So the measure of angle 1 plus 78 degrees is going to be equal to 180 degrees. So I'm just going to think about solving this equation for angle 1. So I'm just subtracting 78 from both sides to get the measure of angle 1 is equal to 102 degrees. Okay, let's jump to C. So in C, we're looking at one angle. The angle 1 is an interior angle, and the 70 degrees is an exterior angle. But these are corresponding angles because they're in the same spot with relation to the parallel lines and the transversal. And corresponding angles are congruent, which means that the measure of angle 1 is 70 degrees. Okay. And then our last example, we are looking at exterior angles that are on alternate sides of the transversal. So these are alternate exterior angles, which are congruent. So the measure of angle 1 is 103 degrees. Okay. So these 4 examples are pretty basic examples of how to use these 4 different types of angles to identify missing angle measures. In these next few examples, we're going to start getting a little trickier and try to identify maybe angles that are a little bit more complex. Okay. So I am actually going to let you guys press pause and try working through this next example. In this example, you are finding all of the missing angle measures. So go ahead and hit pause here. I will fill in all the answers so you can check your work though. All right, hopefully when you work through that example, you were able to get these 7 angle measures that I have listed out. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these next ones. So here we're going to be doing similar to what we did before when we were using things like vertical angles and supplementary angles to solve for x. So let's look at example A. I am dealing with this angle the 7x minus 5 degrees and the 65 degrees. And those are corresponding angles, which means that these two angles are equal to each other. So 7x minus 5 has to be equal to 65. So since they're equal, I'm just going to set up this equation and then use it to solve for x. So 7x equals 70. Sorry, I ran out of space. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7 to get rid of that 7 that's in front of the x. And x is equal to 10. Okay. All right, let's look at B. So B is similar. We are looking at two angles that are both interior angles, and they're on the same side of the transversal. So they're same side interior angles, which means that they are supplementary. So if I were to add these two angles up, I should get 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and simplify this. I'm going to start by combining the 142 and the negative 11 to get 131. So 131 plus x is equal to 180. Then I will subtract 131 from both sides to get x equals 49 degrees. So this is the kind of thing that you're going to be doing a lot of, is figuring out what the relationship is between the two angles. And usually they're either going to be that the two angles are congruent, like in example A, so you'll just set them equal to each other. Or in example B, the two angles will be supplementary, so you'll add them and set them equal to 180. This is going to be really good practice for you guys to practice solving your linear equations. So make sure you're combining like terms and that you're getting that x by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and encourage you guys to hit pause right here, solve the next two examples on your own, and then jump back on and check your answers. Okay, hopefully you were able to work through those two problems and find both what x is and what the angles are. So once you find what your x value is, you just go back and plug that back into your to the expressions that represent the angle to figure out what the actual angle measure is.